Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar with Welch's and Celerant. The response over the past few weeks has been phenomenal and so we're really excited to get started. But before I introduce your speakers, I do have a couple of housekeeping points. Just to address any confusion arising from the confirmation email, we're aiming for an hour-long session, not two. This hour would include time at the end for the Q&A and we'll get through as many questions as we can. But there are a lot of you tuned in today, so do get yours in early. To ask a question, you can use the box under the slides on your screen. This is private and we'll be keeping them anonymous when answering. You can also use this box to let me know if you have any technical issues today, and I'll do my best to help you out. So let's introduce your two speakers today. First, we have Michael Frankel, who is the VP for North America Sales for Celerant. He's been there for 9 years, with over 15 years in the PLM industry, and in that time has worked closely with many leading global process manufacturing companies to implement product development systems that significantly accelerate the process. Alongside Michael, we have Gordon Conkling, Business Process Lead at Welch's. Over 25 years with Welch's in plant operations and IT, extensive experience leading ERP deployment, data collection, and PLM solutions. In 2013, he deployed Celerant DevX PLM solution, and in 2017, deployed the DevX Supplier Portal quality management capability, which you'll be hearing more about today. Which brings me on to the webinar agenda. So first, you're going to hear about some of the common PLM and supply chain management challenges of today. You'll be hearing the Supplier Portal technology case study at Welch's from Gordon, before moving on to some Supplier Portal business value and ROI points from Mike. And then we'll move on to the Q&A, as I mentioned. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Mike for the start of the presentation.
Thank you, John. Very excited to be here. Looking from the people, there are over 42 countries participating. So this whole topic on PLM and supplier portals is obviously of global interest and a global challenge. Before I get to I want to give everybody a little bit of background on Celerant. Celerant Corporation has been in business for 30 years. DevX PLM, which is our flagship product, was actually launched in 2003. It's very mature, widely utilized for PLM. We have over 600 global customers, everybody from enterprise customers with 1,000 users to emerging startups with fives and tens. But they've all commonly found value in innovating with our software. We are a leader in process PLM. We actually are really the category creator of process PLM. And as a company, we're recognized globally for our deep domain expertise. And this extends into all areas. We have a world-class professional services organization. We have strong domain in terms of the design of our software, regulatory, etc. And we're a global company. Our key operation markets are New York, Milan, Italy, and Shanghai, China, with satellite offices all over the world. And our focus is really three core markets, being food and beverage, specialty chemical, and personal care. So that's a bit about us. And I wanted to, just provide just a working definition, because we're talking about the extending portals into a PLM. And product lifecycle management is an enterprise platform to do new product development. And there's really four common components of it. As you can see on the left, there's a unified database, which is often called the single version of the truth. There's functionality that's used by different areas, such as purchasing and regulatory and marketing. that are involved in the collaborative launch process. PLM has workflows that are used for all areas of the approval process and all areas of change control that are needed for making products. And PLM systems have real-time visibility into the product development process. This is important because you're not doing executing off of one product. You're doing it off of a wide number of products. And you can see on the graph on the right how at DevEx we represent product development starting at the project phase and launching into work streams. Here you have formulation on the top and packaging on the bottom, all the areas in the middle representing the collaboration that takes place and, of course, leading to the finished product. So that's, this is an internal technology, and the challenge is that product development isn't just an internal effort. It involves the supply chain, as all of you know, and supply chain areas can be pretty significant. So let's talk about this. This is one of our prototype customers. This one happens to be in food and beverage. So the supply chain that they have 4 manufacturing plants and 12 brands and 500 SKUs, 600 internal users of PLM, 200 suppliers that change a lot, raw materials that need to be approved, in this case like 1,700, 6,800 current formulas, and kind of a market demand to do at least 180 more, and 30 packaging components. So if you can imagine, that's a lot separate from even doing new product development that has to be taken into consideration. And it's this supply chain that creates a challenge and also the opportunity that Celerant and DevEx have addressed. So let's talk about it in terms of the business context. The drivers, as you see, is that new product development and supply chain, both areas require high quality and accurate product data. You have to be able to make informed decisions for cost and quality and performance optimization. Customers and consumers are increasingly demanding product information as well. PLM systems are increasingly becoming the product information repository of record, so that if there is a labeling issue or product recall, that, for instance, PLM systems are being demanded to be part of that. Also, supply chain traceability and the proactive management of potential issues is also an obvious driver. And with these drivers come the inherent challenges with PLM and supply chain, because these processes have typically been separated. And because they've been separated, the integration of these areas has represented significant level of time, resource, and overhead data. Just think of things like onboarding a number of diverse vendors. And also, for instance, having to take supplier data and transition it into PLM usable formats, which is what we call structured data. These are the challenges. Now, Celerant about 4 years ago addressed these areas when we built our supplier collaboration portal. These portals are not new. They were used in the PLM as it related to aerospace and defense. We took a leadership position and we put these portals in place to extend the value of DevEx and PLM into our core, into our 3 core markets. So you can see here on the portal, it really represents the central center from which a PLM user on the right can communicate with a supplier on the left. So, for instance, you can, as a DevX user, you can provide information to a supplier, immediately establish a workflow, have the supplier complete it as you have stated it, bring it back into the PLM system, and have it separately reviewed, analyzed, and if appropriate, put the information into the system or close out a workflow. So that's a little bit on the supplier portal in general, and Gordon is going to, Conklin's going to talk about it in detail. But I want to just close my opening points by talking about the requisite features that are required in supplier portals. We design these portals to be robust in 5 areas. First of all, they have to be separately accessed by suppliers. A supplier cannot touch the PLM system, and this is important whether you're deploying these systems on premise through your firewalls or having a company like us host them. The second thing is that these systems have to be seamlessly integrated into PLM. The information, the workflows themselves. Third is that these portals have to have advanced security features. Whenever you talk about a portal, separately accessed, they have to they get vetted by the IT departments, and they have to meet those qualifications in terms of security and things like that. Fourth is that they have to be configurable and have onboarding data control mechanisms, really important for getting portals on and changing them. And the last area is that they're questionnaire and template driven. And this is important because the needs of, for instance, a food company are going to be different than a cosmetics company or a specialty chemical company. And these questionnaires are become kind of like the configuration aspect of these portals and make it good for communicating with the multitude of vendors. So those are my opening comments, and I'm very excited to be hearing from Gordon and Welch's of the practical experiences with the portals. Gordon?
Thanks, Mike. As Mike mentioned, I'm Gordon Conklin from Welch's, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about our experience with the supplier collaboration portal that is the Celerant product. But first, I want to tell you a little about who is Welch's. We are the world's leader in the manufacturing of grape juice. We are a co-op, which is kind of unique. We're not a public company or a private company. We're actually owned by the Concord and Niagara growers that are part of our co-op, which is a national grape co-op. And you see in the slide, our products are pretty diverse. We have juice products, spreads, jams and jellies, and through a network of our own manufacturers and co-manufacturers, we produce a wide variety of healthy and wholesome products. Let me talk to you a little bit about the supplier collab, and during this section, here's some of the key areas I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about what our business case was for SCP. Talk a little bit about the SCP software itself. Highlight some of our configuration activities that we undertook, and give you some samples of the supplier collab portal slides that you would see on your side, as well as some of the things that the suppliers would see. I think that's important. And then I want to talk a little bit about Welch's current state with the SCP product and what we see next. And we see some exciting things coming in the future with this vehicle. So going on to what was our as is? Everybody says, okay, what was your as is? This picture tells you what our as is was. We had all our data was either on people's computers, it was on notebooks, and there was no standard information out there. Nothing was standardized. And anytime we had to find something out, it was a slow process to find out, okay, what facilities do we have out there in our supplier network that also have peanuts in their facilities? So all these kind of give you a feel as to where we're at. We had no way to manage as to when a food safety audit at one of our suppliers' facilities was expiring. And so with that in mind, we did see some urgency to get something done. I think we all recognize that, things get done when there becomes pressure. As food safety has continued to increase, as it should, a lot of reporting requirements come up from regulatory agencies, things to be able to respond based on bioterrorism, being able to respond quickly to internal and external folks became more and more critical, and our customer demands have become more and more frequent, more and more detailed, more and more complex. And like a lot of folks, we're dealing with reduced headcounts and job consolidations that kind of drive a need to automate and standardize the information we had. And there was no way, as I mentioned earlier, we had no way of knowing when critical documents like food safety audits were expiring at our facilities, and we had no way to do ad hoc polling. And so, we sat back, obviously those things as kind of the foundations of our business requirements. We said, okay, what's that next layer that we need to make sure we need to enable those requirements? And these are some of the things we saw as critical. We wanted something that integrated seamlessly to our existing DevX system. As Mike mentioned, we have implemented DevX for specification management and management prior to SCP. So that was a critical driver. We wanted all this information in a central location. We wanted to be able to get at it. It's one thing to get the data, but having the ability to get the data out when you need it is a real critical consideration in the world we're in today. And, that managing of expiration dates I mentioned, we wanted. And we also wanted some accountability on the supplier side. We wanted the supplier responsible for their data, inputting it, and in a manner that they couldn't get into CR specifications and formulas, but where they were responsible for providing that data and the quality of it. And so with that in mind, we looked at a couple different options for software, and we settled on the Seller and SCP solution. And I'll just give you some of the reasons we liked about it. It was fully integrated with the DevX PLM, the questionnaire, and you'll see throughout this presentation, I'll use this abbreviation QN, just saves from having to write out questionnaire. We wanted it to be questionnaire driven, supplier driven. We had a lot of suppliers we had set up previously where we were doing some work in DevX, but not a lot. But what vendor data we wanted to be able to use that as a starting point for a deeper use of the SCP. And like a couple of key things, we wanted the suppliers to be responsible, and we found that with the SCP solution. And one of the things we found too is it would support a cloud hosting, or you can do it on-prem network configuration. And we opted to do on-premise configuration, because that just made more sense for us since we already had the DevX PLM system already on site. Okay, so I mentioned that the SCP solution is questionnaire driven. And the first thing you need to understand is, what's the hierarchy? How does all these questionnaires come together? And it's basically a 3-tier hierarchy. On the top of it is the supplier. That would be, the flavor house. And underneath the supplier, you have facilities, and you can have many facilities to one supplier. So if you have a flavor supplier, you might have facilities in Pennsylvania, California, Texas that could be individual facilities under that supplier. And under each facility, that's where you make your mapping to what your materials are. And it is feasible that multiple facilities can provide you this material. And it does support that. So that's kind of the overview of the hierarchy. So if you get your head around this, that's the thing you understand is that hierarchy. One supplier, multiple facilities, each facility, multiple materials. And one of the other things that's really nice about the questionnaires is that you can customize them to your specific requirements. You can have questions that are yes or no, spots for folks to upload documents, place for them to enter in comments, or you'll see on our nutritionals, they can calculate the nutritionals on the page, which is pretty slick. Okay. So here's some of the types of questions. I kind of hit on this a little bit already. You can do analytical information, document upload, and general questions about, what do you have a food safety team? How do they meet? What are your storage requirements? You've got this ability to have a wide range of questions specific to your needs. What we ask for for a juice manufacturer would be radically different, or maybe not radically, but significantly different than what somebody in the pharmaceutical industry would ask. And the great thing about this software is both industries can get what they need out of the product. And one of the other things I think is really nice about it is data from the questions can be uploaded directly to an experimental raw material. So if you're going out, and we found this has been a big time saver for our product developers, instead of them trying to track all this down with the suppliers and then have to load the information into DevX. You can click on select different attributes and have that upload automatically into an experimental raw material that's a new initiative. So some of the highlights of our configuration, I mentioned about the nutritional data, and I've actually got I'll show a little bit of a screenshot of it later on, but we're able to capture the nutritional data and make sure it meets our rounding rules. So when you look at it, when the supplier enters in the data, our data for calculations for calories, for example, is not going to be skewed by some rounding rules that supplier may be using. There are standard rounding rules, and every ingredient that comes in is getting that same set of consistent calculations applied to it, which is beneficial. You can capture allergen data in a searchable format, and as I mentioned, expiration of files was big for us. We have the ability to manage those, and you actually get alerts from the system when a document has expired. In this process, this questionnaire process, if you're going through a submittal and revision process with the supplier, there's a supplier panel that allows collaboration with comments. It's not like it's an instant messenger, but they submit a questionnaire. We've got a comment like, hey, you're missing an answer to this question, or can you explain this? We can put it in this panel, the supplier feedback panel, and send the questionnaire back to them, and they'll see that information right there. They can open it up and see it, which has become a nice collaborative feature of the software. And a couple other things from highlights that we did. There's the ability to have online videos. There's a help section that's in the software, and we've used that to upload videos on the supplier side. So what that did for us, that saved us having to go out and train every supplier. We direct them, they're sent the information about logging in, we inform them about the help videos that are out there, and they can access those and learn how to fill out a questionnaire about a supplier or facility level. And that really cut down on some of the admin burden for our folks, which really stayed true to our theme of supplier accountability and involvement in the data. And some other things real quick, you could capture key facility contacts. If you need to get hold of a facility in the middle of the night, you can go to SCP, see who the facility manager is or who's the quality/tech rep. That you can get a hold of that person if it's a critical question. You can customize the terms and conditions to meet your needs, and you can associate brokers to a supplier if that's part of your requirements. So moving on, I'd like to talk a little bit about actually giving you a chance to see the SCP software a little bit. We'll take a look at some dashboards and some queries. So what you see here pops up on the screen now. This is the SCP homepage, and you have this real nice dashboard. And what this dashboard shows you is on the left side, these are the questionnaires that are awaiting your review. They've been submitted by the supplier, and they're waiting for your review. And on the other side, that shows you the questionnaires that are out to the supplier, and it gives you how they're coming. So like you see this guy down here, you see his % completed, and you got a date reference. You can say, I better give them a call, see if they're running into something or if they lost track of this. One thing you'll notice is not all these questionnaires are at 100%. And the reason that is because there are some questions that are not mandatory. In other words, it's on the questionnaire. If they need to comment on, they can. Or if they want to comment on, they can, but it's not essential information for us. The key point on that is that you won't see 100%. When you don't see 100%, that's necessarily not a bad thing. But they cannot, on their side, once again, going back to their accountability piece, if there's a piece of data that Welch's considers critical, mandatory, they can't submit it to us without entering that question. And they'll get an error message on their side that tells them, hey, go look at question 16.3, you didn't respond to it. Once again, it's part of that driving the supplier accountability. Okay, and on the supplier questionnaire in general, how we set it up, and what's nice about this is you can configure this to your specific business requirements. I'm just speaking for what we did. We kind of looked at it as a supplier. That first step, really in our world, that's driven by our purchasing folks. They're responsible for finding a supplier that we're looking for. And so the requirements kind of focuses on the supplier's data related to purchasing. Things like what we call a W-9, any contact information for the purchasing folks, non-disclosure agreements. They can actually upload the non-disclosure agreement right to the SCP system. So we've got it right there. And which is nice about that is down the road, if you got a question about a supplier, you can go back and say, okay, yep, we've got an NDA for these guys, we're good to go. And it could be a question of, maybe we don't have a facility approved, but, somebody inquires, is this supplier, can we go purchase from them? If we got an NDA or discuss things with them, we've got an NDA in place. So here's a couple more examples off the supplier questionnaire. You can see here's the contact box. It's the standard stuff, the person's job role, their name, title, email, phone number can be added in there. And you can see right here is another example where this is for the NDA document. You can see it's just an upload. They just upload a Word document. And it's not just Word. You can upload Word, Excel, PDFs, the whole gamut. So I'm going to move over to the facility questionnaires. You remember earlier I said that the supplier's at the higher level, then there's the facilities. So when we looked at the facility questionnaire, we really drove that to be focused on our food safety and quality. I've got FSQ there, but it's food safety and quality. We really focused on their requirements, known allergens in the plant, food pest control, What's your inventory management? Food safety audit results. We can actually, if we wanted to, we can have them upload their pest control maps to their facilities. So we really zeroed in on the facility, looking at those FSQ related items. Here's a couple examples screens for you. You can see that this first question, it's basically you can set up yes, no, or multiple choices. There could be multiple radio button choices, and you'll see, geez, what's that red dot by the numbers? Remember earlier I said some questions are mandatory and some questions are not. If a question is mandatory, the supplier is aware of that because that question will have this red marker by it, telling them that that's required. And then you see right here, here's a question that's not mandatory, that there's no red mark. So this would be an example of a question. If they didn't answer this one, it wouldn't count in that percent or would count in that percent of the percentage completed. And so it's a good screenshot. Shows you a couple selections where we put it in. And you could put more than just yes and no, as I mentioned. An example where they can upload, and another example of where they can just enter in a narrative. And just a couple more questions so you kind of get a feel for it. And here's an example, like I mentioned, you can do more yes than no. You could put all kinds, and it doesn't have to be yes and no. You could put GMO type stuff in there. You'll see that when we look at our material stuff. Okay, now talking about the material questionnaire. Now, for us, the material questionnaire has both R&D and FSQ requirements. So just real quick, some of the things we look at in there are nutritional information, allergens, GMO, country of origin. And I'll show you a little bit of that next couple slides. So here you see, I was talking earlier about the nutritionals. What they do is they come in for different nutrients. They put the information in, and you'll see that there's some that have got an M by it, and there's one here down there that's got a C by it. If it's got an M by it, it tells the supplier, it flags to them that it is a mandatory entry. So in other words, they cannot go past this question without entering that mandatory ingredient or nutrient, sorry. So if you see the two M's, they have to enter in that, and if they try to save it and upload it, it'll stop them. They haven't responded to a mandatory nutrient. And you see the C, that tells you that's a calculated value, and they can't update the calculated value. So that makes it pretty nice that they can go through and enter in their values. And I mentioned earlier, it's our rounding rules. It's our standards that are being applied for calories and carbohydrates or what have you. Okay, and on this next slide, what you have here is on GMOs. Well, GMOs is a big topic, and we felt it wasn't enough to give them the choices. We wanted to say, okay, let's make sure they understand what we're talking about when we say no. What's our definition of no? Because two people can define no differently, right? So what we did is we implemented adding this box in here that provided them definitions as reference for the questions. And now I want to flip over the other side. What I showed you is, the actual questionnaire, but I want to show you some of the supplier-facing emails that they would receive as part of the process. The first thing that happens is after you set up a supplier and you launch the notifications to them, this is the first thing they're going to get. They're going to get a notification that gives them a username and a password. And this link right here is where they would go in and they'll create their account in the system. So the first thing they do is they create their account in the system. And we added this in. This wasn't a standard Solent thing, but we wanted this so we know where they're at in the process and they know where they're at. So step 1 of 4 is login and registration. and you see here, this is the supplier questionnaire notification. This comes out at the same time as when they create their account login. But this is where they'll go out, and if they were to click this link, this has got their supplier questionnaire that they would fill out. And I mentioned earlier about the online help videos. Right here is this is their landing page. This is on the supplier side, and you can see we've got a whole series of help sections: supplier, facility, material, and these are the videos over here. So if I had a question about those, I could click on that, click on the video, and we try to keep those videos to the point, and most of them run around 5 to 7 minutes. You know, they can pause them. So if you're filling out a questionnaire, you can pause it, go fill out the question, come back to the video. Nice feature, really, as I mentioned, saved us some admin time, and you know, once again, enable the supplier to be responsible to do their own data entry. Okay, and you know, here's some more facility questions. I wanted to show you this because this is one of the mandatory things. In the facility questionnaire is, you know, they have to enter in the supplier contacts, and we've got it set up in the templates that they have to enter in who the facility manager, who the quality technical. So this is a case where what I was trying to drive home with this one is we can say you need to get specific contacts through a template setup. Okay, so where's Welch's at with the SCP software? We have 89 suppliers implemented, 142 facilities, roughly 248 materials at the time of this presentation putting together, which I know this has gone up. And you can go and get stats on all this right out of your system. You can see where you're at. We have over 109 unique suppliers, users set up, and 97 suppliers. And so what's next for Welch's? You know, Welch's feels like we made a good decision with the SCP product. We wouldn't be here today if we didn't feel that, and we certainly wouldn't be doing what we've got planned here for the next couple of years. This year, we just actually kicked this project off earlier this week. We're going to start reporting on bioengineering. We're kind of moving away from GMO. We're going to a bioengineering reporting that we need to make. So we're going to be doing two things as part of this initiative in 2020. We're going to be developing a specific questionnaire for existing materials. So all the materials that I just mentioned we have in the system, we've got to go out and get bioengineering information on them. And we don't have to redo the whole questionnaire. We're going to go out, create a specific questionnaire, get that information, bring it into our system, and leave the existing data untouched and not have to go through the whole thing. That's part one of it. And that's one of the things I mentioned earlier about questionnaires is the ability to configure them as you need it. And the second part of this initiative is, you know, we've got the questionnaire that we've already developed, our material questionnaire. Well, we got to revise that for the future, you know. So bottom line is, after we get the software ready to go, there's two things that is going to happen. We need to get the existing supplier-based materials updated, and then going forward, we need to implement a new questionnaire that has the bioengineering elements. And then we're really excited about 2021. We're going to go out and implement with our packaging suppliers. You know, all of our bottles, caps, labels suppliers, get them into the SCP system, which we think is going to be a really good initiative for us. In the future, other enhancements we're thinking about, more robust broker functionality. We can map and associate brokers, but we'd like to do more with that, and as well as some more with ad hoc information requests that we'd like to see with the system. So with that said, I'm going to kick it back to Mike, who'll take you through the next section of the presentation.
Hey, Gordon, thank you very much. It's always exciting to get this level of detail, and we've worked as a, in strong partnership as Celerant does with all of our DevEx customers. I want to close before we open this up to questions with some comments on the supplier portal from a business value and an ROI standpoint, and a few slides in this area. One of the whole title of this is extending the business value of PLM, which is a significant investment. And I think that you're seeing that the integrating with PLM with the supply chain is significant. On a broad thing, it's going to serve to significantly improve productivity, and that's a lot of that is a function of really three areas. One is the overall efficiency in the new product development process, the fact that you can have the supplier community tied into it, and between managing of them, the questionnaires and the workflow, it makes for a more efficient process. Second is that you're not only addressing supplier challenges, but you're also addressing quality management requirements. These are not just about dealing with suppliers in the overall new product development process, but also dealing with quality aspects. And then the third area is that you're, by putting these portals in, you're really reducing the resource burden for all parties. Everything from the onboarding to the analyzing, the implementing of structured data, etc. What we found is that these portals, when they first came in, they were to be used for new product development, but they found that they're now being used for quality management aspects as well, which is really important because typically before these portals came into play, customers would buy separate standalone QMS systems, but now they can leverage and make more efficient the supplier portal for these kind of aspects. And our portal is designed to do things like CAPA reporting and nonconformance material reporting. We can have the workflows and change management that's important for vendor auditing. I mentioned compliant and resolution management and change request management, which is often a area of quality management feeds into purchasing as well. So this portal technology is being used in that way. So it's further making the PLM investments more powerful. Now, the ROIs on these systems have been very noteworthy and powerful. We work with many customers, and they're all under NDAs. And when we survey them for the value, we have to be very cognizant of the relationships we have, and also the uniqueness in our various three core markets of food and beverage, specialty chemical, and personal care. But as you can see from the summary, there's significant reductions that our customers are telling us that have occurred in these areas. First, mistrust in data accuracy. The fact that you have structured data and you're controlling through templates, that these areas are very important and compelling. The overall time to formulate with collaboration has significantly been reduced, as has the product review time, and the fact that you can have suppliers actually participate in these areas as well. Quality management, those issues in the review time have also been significantly reduced. For instance, through the portal technology, one of the unique things that we can do is push formulation and other manufacturing information into co-packers. So it's not just about suppliers, but it's also about the communication with co-packers for quality information. Another area that we found 25 to 40% is the overall product development effort by more efficiently managing the supply chain. And the last area is just one overall that our customers are reporting, that supplier compliance issues have had a 75 to 90% reduction through using this portal technology. So these areas are certainly compelling. Those are my comments on the ROIs associated. Josh?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Gordon. Great stuff. Now, as promised, we have left some time for your questions, and it is just as well because they really have been coming in thick and fast. There's a lot of interest here. So, Mike and Gordon, let's get through as many as we can, shall we? And jump straight in. First question I have, I think is for you, probably, Gordon. Question is, will this not slow down the development step if first the supplier needs to fill out the questionnaire?
Yeah, we have found that it has not been a significant impact. What we are able to do is we're not going to buy an ingredient from somebody until we check their facility out anyways. So what we have done is that as a supplier questionnaire has to be completed first before we head into development. But we also, once that supplier is approved, we can at the same time be approving the facility at the same time we're approving the material. And really, from our perspective, the supplier information that we're gathering is the same information that our supplier team, our purchasing team, would be gathering for the supplier before we would approve using them. And outside of this, there are some other things that go on that we're not tracking here. We do a credit check and worthiness check on our suppliers before we even start using them. So I understand the question, but for us, we have not seen that. It's just another activity going on in the same stream.
Great, thank you, Gordon. Another one here for Mike this time, I'd say. So, Mike, is there an automatic notification to the supplier when their certificate has expired?
Yes, that's these automatic notifications. That's part of the workflow that's configured in these systems that I talked about when we designed the supplier collaboration portal to do precisely that. That's an important dimension. Gordon, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, Mike. There is, and there's two levels to that. One is that when the suppliers enter in documents, there is a place where they can enter in an expiration date. And so you have level one is that when that document reaches expiration, they're sent a notification, and the suppliers, and you're sent a notification that a document's has expired. You have that capability, and you also have the ability to develop your own reports or concurrent jobs that use that can show you who's expiring soon or who has expired. More of a report format across the enterprise. But yeah, the supplier is notified when a document is expired.
Thanks, Gordon. Thanks, Mike. Gordon, a follow-up question for you here. Can you also fix certain specifications or requirements that the supplier is not able to change? So specific demands from us.
Can you give me the question again? I'm not 100% understanding.
Sure. So it's asking if it's possible to fix certain specifications or requirements that the supplier can't change, as in specific demands from us. Mike, maybe you'd like to start with that one?
Okay. Yeah, I think that just maybe started. That's a lot of when you design the templates. That's how you're able to fix specifications.
Yeah, yeah. The configuration layer is pretty good, and what's nice about it is you can build it based on your business rules. You don't have to follow what Welch's did or anybody else that's implemented the software. You don't have to go down the same cookie cutter process that they've done. And you can, let's say you submitted a questionnaire with a question worded one way, and then, a year down the road, you say, oh, we want to change that or it's not working. You could go and revise that question and questionnaire and send it back out to standardize it.
Thanks, Gordon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
again, Josh, that's part and parcel of when we deploy the portal. Continue.
Great. One for you here, Mike. So how do you get the suppliers to go and enter their data, or this data? Do they push back? And who pays for the portal? Does it cost the suppliers connected to the portal?
Yeah, maybe I'll start the answer to that and have Gordon bring in some real life perspective. I'll start with the second question first. The portal is paid for by the company with the PLM. We license this in blocks of 100 for precisely this reason, and then you can control and change it. So from the supplier standpoint, this is neutral to the supplier. Now, in terms of the getting them to fill out the information, that's where these questionnaires come in place, both the questionnaires and the workflow that goes along with it. These questionnaires are designed by each customer. They have fields that are populated, and it's like purchasing something off of a credit card. If you don't fill in all the boxes, you can't submit it and get get it back into the system and therefore back to the PLM user. And Gordon, maybe you can comment on this and perhaps some of the adoption challenges.
Yeah, I can handle both of those. What we did, as Mike mentioned, the actual software purchase that came out of our money. When the question came up is, the cost per licenses, do we pass that on to the supplier and ask them to pay that, or do we pay that and see where we land out? What we opted to do is because Welch's has a bigger shadow than we are. We compete with Pepsi and Coca-Cola and some other large manufacturers directly, and we're not as big as them. So when it comes down to who has more influence over suppliers, obviously they do. So what we did is we opted that we would buy and pay for the licenses. And what we've seen from a total cost of ownership, we're further ahead because we haven't had to add a person to handle this. And, we're getting the information more timely. So bottom line is we opted to handle it by us paying for it and, with our suppliers. Adoption challenges, truly they're out there. Sometimes what we see on the adoption challenges, it's the suppliers that you work with on the two extremes, the very large suppliers and the very small suppliers. The very small suppliers have a challenge because they may not have the expertise that they need to do that. And the very large suppliers, they've got their own set of governance about using portals. We had one supplier that refused to do it because we don't do that for anybody. Which I think since then we've kind of worked with them and they're starting to do some more for us. But what way we got around that is we wanted to have all our supplier data in that same format. So one of the things you can do is with some of these suppliers that are unable or unwilling to use the system or to fill out the data for you, what we've done is we have one of our folks, obviously not full time, gets the information from the supplier, they fill it out, and so we have that. It's us entering in the data, but it looks like it came from the supplier, and it's relevant to them. And what's nice is that we have all our data in the same repository. And the thing we have seen is that we've had a couple instances where new suppliers, they come in, they're ready to do this because they see a business opportunity working with Welch's, and so it's been positive. But there definitely going to be some folks that'll have pushback, and as I mentioned, it's generally the real big guys or the real small companies.
Thanks, Gordon. We have a follow-up question here to the previous one about the setup of the questionnaires. So the question is, can the questionnaires be set up by the client administrator, or does it need some or indeed extensive programming from Celerant?
No, they can be set up by the software, or I'm sorry, by us, by the customer. There's basically, I'd call it like a library. There's a questionnaire repository that has all the different questions. You can go in and create those, and you can map them into the questionnaires. Now, your average person's, probably not going to be real technically savvy to do that, but someone with low-level IT skills can do it. You're basically creating a question in the repository, and you just basically pull it out of the catalog and put it on your questionnaire, and you create a new version of it. And the Celerant does have that's a pretty solid manual on the SCP product, user manual, that can help you through it.
Thanks, Gordon. And how long was the process to set up the questionnaires and the system?
Yeah, I think we were probably about a 6-month implementation. I'm trying to go back a couple years between the time we decided to go and we had it fully implemented, where people could start doing the questions.
Josh, these systems are designed because of the questionnaires and the need to do testing and put them through the normal processes. They're typically they can range from 3 to 6 months as a typical deployment to be full in.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Gordon. I've got one eye on the clock here, so I think we've probably got time for one more question. And that is, how do you handle suppliers that refuse to support the supplier portal? Good one for you, Gordon, I think.
Yeah, I think I kind of hit on that just a minute ago. But basically, if the suppliers that don't support the portal, and all businesses, what is your opportunity? What are your requirements? What options do you have? If we're talking a flavor house, say, that we have other alternative flavor suppliers in, we have. I'm not using a specific with anybody, but if you have a flavor house, we did have a situation. It wasn't a flavor house that there was a lot of pushback on using the supplier portal, and we said, well, you got to understand this is part of our supplier grading, and when we look at who we're going to be doing business with, this is a consideration we want our preferred suppliers to do for us. And they backed off and they started doing it. So I guess leverage where you can is my take. Leverage where you can on the relationship if you got somebody resisting it. And as I mentioned earlier, what we did is we could take input, create I hate the term, but a dummy license for one of our folks to go in on behalf of that supplier and enter the information in. They got to provide the data. I mean, if we've got somebody that just won't tell us about the material, we probably don't have a relationship we want to go into. So that's basically bottom line is leverage where you can to encourage participation. We found it's been a good carrot and a good stick. It's been a good stick for people that have not been supportive, and it's been a great carrot for new suppliers that want to come in and want Welch business. But you also have the backup if you don't have that ability to where you can enter the data on their behalf in the SCP, Or you can enter the data if you have DevX already, which I assume you would have DevX, but you can also enter that data directly into DevX if you choose to do so. We wanted all the data in the same place, so we took the approach of creating a dummy SCP user for that particular supplier.
Thank you so much. Mike, anything to add to that final question?
I think that always the adoption of what you do with getting people to use the technology is always a challenge, and most companies that put these automations in seem to find their workarounds, and sometimes have to internally flex as needed. But the adoption tends to come, and you're obviously your suppliers are co-packer suppliers. They have to work with the customer, so they tend to work themselves out these issues.
Brilliant. Thank you both. So we better finish it there. We've gone over the hour as promised. Sorry if we couldn't answer your questions today. There were a lot coming in, and we got through as many as we could, but there were definitely some unanswered. I'm sure Mike and your team, Mike, will follow up with the unanswered questions very soon. Just to let you all know, the session was recorded, so you'll receive a link to the recording by email tomorrow. And on this last slide here, you can see Mike's contact details. So if you have any questions at all, I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Right, Mike?
Yes. Definitely, you'll have my contact information, and we're really glad that everybody has taken the time to learn more about extending the value of PLM through our supplier portal technology. And we thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be doing this with Welch's, one of our great customers. So
great. Thanks again, Mike, and thank you, Gordon, for sharing your story and answering the questions. And thanks to everyone out there for tuning in. Until next time, goodbye.